it's Stephanie here from HMO Heaven again, and this week's video is all about why rent to rent is illegal, immoral and a scam. It absolutely makes steam come out of my ears. And what set me off this time was on Thursday this week, a post popped up from one of the Facebook HMO groups, and it was a person asking for information if he wanted to give his property out on a rent-to-rent basis, and he was asking for advice on his mortgage and so on. And some of the responses that came back really knocked me for six. So one person was quite insistent that rent-to-rent is illegal. Another person said rent-to-rent is morally not right. Another person says nothing will get them to think highly of rent-to-rent. And I think it's not about these individual people who've said this. So many people say this across property, and it's a misconception, and it's just downright wrong. There have been cases where unscrupulous people, criminals, fraudsters, have used rent-to-rent illegally and immorally. However, those are illegal, unscrupulous people. We've had instances where letting agents have run off with deposits and all sorts, and people don't go around saying that letting agents are illegal and immoral. And what I'm here to say today is that rent to rent is a fantastic service. It's a great service for HMO landlords when it's done properly. And there are so many of us out there providing that HMO service on a rent to rent, guaranteed rent basis. And this video is what's in it for HMO landlords? How does it really work behind the scenes? Is it a good deal for HMO landlords? Because a lot of people out there really think that it's not. And I'm here to tell you that it is. So if you're an HMO landlord and the idea of guaranteed rent really appeals to you, but you're worried about all these stories that rent to rent is illegal and that there are so many scammers out there, I have the perfect video for you. And this is the video which will allow you to determine whether any person, whether it's a rent-to-rent company or whether it's a traditional HMO lettings agency, here are the 5 questions that you need to ask before you give your property to them. And I'll link to the video underneath. The video is called The 5 must-ask questions to ask before choosing an HMO lettings agency. That's essential reading if you're a remote HMO landlord or you're wanting to leverage out the management of your HMO. What I'm going to talk to you about today is how rent-to-rent can work for you as an HMO landlord, how it differs from traditional HMO lettings, and why that's a good thing for you as an HMO landlord. And if you like these videos, please subscribe by hitting the red button below, and also like by hitting the thumbs up button. And if you know anyone who really needs to hear this information, please share this video. HMOs are high maintenance operations. Not everyone wants to manage their HMOs. Many traditional letting agents don't want to manage HMOs. So we do need specialist HMO managers. But first I want to take a moment to explain what's happening in Newport. And this is happening in many other parts of the country. There's oversupply of HMO rooms or certain types of HMO rooms, and rents are coming down slightly. So I just want to walk you through the statistics for our area, and then I'll go on and explain why we can provide a really viable alternative to a traditional letting agent that's better for landlords. Got these slides which I took a couple of days ago for a presentation, and this was the 93 results for rooms in Newport at that time. This is the first 2 listings, and both under £400. As you can see, 3 out of 4 on this page are under £400 a month, and the top one is a new property, completely newly refurbished with ensuite, and even that one's only 405 to 450. Moving on to the next page, it's all in the 300s there, from 350 to 375. The top one at 350 is newly renovated. really, really lovely rooms. And even we've got a self-contained studio here, and that's all for 370, which is amazing value. And just to give you a little bit of context, of those 93 listings that were on that day, only 12 of them were £400 or above. All of the other rooms, including some ensuite rooms, some newly refurbished rooms, some studio flats, including all the bills, were £400 a month or less. So that just shows you the sort of what's happening in our marketplace. Rents are going down, not up, at the moment. So the first of the 4 issues we're going to compare with the rent-to-rent offering with the traditional letting agent offering is rent. So, of course, on the rent-to-rent side, we've got guaranteed rent. Whoop, whoop. On the HMO lettings agent side, we've got rent. And the lettings agents are incentivised to charge a slightly lower rent to fill the rooms quickly. And in this sort of marketplace, those rents tend to be around the 350, 360, 375 sort of mark. And what the agents are getting 10% of that rent typically. And that is not covering all of their costs, because remember, HMO is a high maintenance operation. So they therefore need to charge additional tenant fees to the tenants who are coming in. Now, I've seen those tenants' fees from between £100 and £300. Now, £300 is an awful lot for these priced of rooms. And this also can keep your rooms empty. So you really need to know what your agent is doing. So if you've got, say it's a 4-bed HMO, and each room, let's be generous and say they are marketing the rooms at 400, then it would be £40 per month. You see, and that compares badly with other single lets. Typically, a letting agent will be managing hundreds of other properties, and so your property then may come secondary after the single lets, which are going to pay them more per month and be less hassle. So we find that to be true in our area, because many landlords are phoning us and saying, oh, my property is rented out with such and such letting agent, and we've had a room empty for months, or we've actually had the whole property empty for months, because there's a tendency to want to rent out to a whole group rather than to rent the rooms individually, so which means that the properties can be empty for a long time. So compare that option with the letting agent to the rent-to-rent option, where the owner gets guaranteed rent every month, irrespective of whether there are empty rooms or not. Hugely attractive. And I've got some tables which I'm going to show you, which are just going to show how our rents compare with letting agent rents. And this is 3 real-life properties that we're now managing, and this is showing what the landlords were achieving previously with the letting agent and what they're now achieving with us. So, as you can see, at the top, we've got the gross rent in. Previously, it was achieving for this 5-bed £1,100 a month. Obviously, that's not all year round. He'd had problems with voids. The property was empty when he first came to us, and the letting agent had been unable to find a new tenant, and so he was experiencing voids. So what we've got here is a management fees at 10%, including VAT. Now, this is a very conservative figure. Most letting agents will be charging at least 10% plus VAT, as they well should be, for managing an HMO. But this is just showing you, even if you put that figure very conservatively at 10%, including the VAT, typically after the management fee, which is 10% plus VAT, plus the tenancy find fees, inventory fees, additions to maintenance fees, and other fees that letting agents charge, you're looking at really realistically between 15 and 25% of gross rent that will go to your letting agent. So do have a think about that one. It's not just the management fees you need to account for, it's all the fees. So then with voids at 5%, again, with the letting agents, because they're not incentivized to fill the rooms in the same way that a rent-to-rent person is, you will be looking at considerable voids. I would say you're lucky if you've got 5% voids, very lucky indeed. That would only be 18.25 days a year empty, which is low for most of the landlords we see with the letting agents. The voids are considerably higher than that. So even with those really good figures, the person's receiving £935 a month, and with HMO Heaven, we are able to offer them £1,000 a month. And we're now managing that property. Again, you can see the same sort of thing is true with this second 5-bed and this third 5-bed that we've got here. So rather than HMO being immoral and bad for landlords and illegal and all the rest of it, it actually can be a really positive service to landlords who want to know definitively how much rent they'll be receiving each month. And I haven't even mentioned the utility bills. We pay all the utility bills, and a renter would normally pay all the utility bills, whereas with a traditional letting agent, the landlord is usually paying the bills. Sometimes he's also administering those payments. Sometimes they're administered on his behalf by the agent for a fee. But irrespective of that, if the tenants go crazy with the heating and leave it on 24/7 tropical, as I call it, then all those extra costs will accrue for the landlord, whereas with rent to rent, all those costs accrue to us. So that's another saving for the landlord. So you can see how it'd be really attractive to a savvy HMO landlord to get the rent guaranteed every month, and in our case that guarantee is for 5 years. So the second way we differ from a traditional letting agent is because of the refurbishments. Now that's very important to us. We love the fact that we make a difference to the way people live, that we create these beautiful, affordable homes that people love to live in, and the landlords that we partner with share in that vision with us. Now I think it's important to us that the properties that we manage are up to a certain standard that, you know, I would be happy to live in, I would be happy for my son to live in. So you probably want to know, how does it work? Because how can we afford to put in thousands of pounds to properties that we don't own and still make a profit? So how it works is that on those last few examples, you saw that the guaranteed rent was £1,000. So then we would assess the property and say to the landlord that for us to market that property and rent out that property consistently for the next 5 years, these are the works that we would need to carry out. And for example, let's just say, for argument's sake, that those works coming to £5,000. So we then say to the landlord, well, you have the choice. You can either pay for those works and we'll pay you the high guaranteed rent that we've already agreed with you, or we can pay for those works and we'll pay you a lower rent. Now, it's all totally transparent. The lower rent that we will pay would be a more than £5,000 reduction. I hope that makes sense. So say over a £100 reduction over the 5-year period of 60 months is £6,000, for example. So if the works were £6,000, the rent reduction would be more than £100. So what that means is that if the landlord does not want to invest in the property right now and does not have that cash lump sum, he's still able to have his property improved on his behalf and accept a rent which is a little bit lower, but with but it's guaranteed, and in some cases it still will exceed the rent that he's been getting either self-managing or having his property managed on his behalf through a letting agent. The third way we deliver is in the level of management that we can offer. We are basically partnering with the property owners over a 5-year period. In some cases, we've invested a considerable amount of money in the property. So we are invested. We have a much smaller number of properties. So a typical letting agent will have 200 plus properties that they're managing. We have a much smaller number and we have a much higher degree of systemization and control than would be typical in a traditional letting agent. And so just to give you a random example of one of the things that we do in all our properties is we assign all of the kitchen cupboards in a subtle way, so the labels are on the inside of the cupboards rather than the outside, but each person has dedicated cupboard, fridge and freezer space. And that only happened after we found that various people were coming and going and leaving their food and bits and pieces in the fridge, freezer and the cupboards, and we didn't know whose was whose. So we've now got across all our properties that there's dedicated cupboard, fridge and freezer space, just so when a new person moves in, they know exactly where to put their things, and that really helps. And these are just the small little things that help the houses to really run well and help people to feel comfortable in their home and know exactly what's what. And those are the typical things that you wouldn't get through a traditional non-specialist letting agent. We also handle all of the licensing visits. We know the licensing team. We can handle licensing applications, and we can handle the statutory, regulatory side of things on behalf of the landlords, and that really gives them peace of mind. The fourth thing is maintenance. We pay for all the minor maintenance on our properties. So when the phone rings to say a door handle's fallen off, or the oven door handle, that was a recent one, has come off, anything that goes wrong, the shower rail has slightly come away, or the shower curtain needs replacing, we'll deal with all those calls. We're the hub for all of our tenant inquiries, and we get everything sorted out as soon as possible, organising our contractors. So it really is an all-round service for the landlord. That's why it really pains me when people say that HMO is illegal, immoral, and is not a great deal for landlords. It's a fantastic deal for landlords. And I really think people need to be educated about what rent-to-rent really is versus their sort of scandalised headlines about what rent-to-rent is. So I respectfully say to all the haters out there that rent-to-rent is not illegal, it's not immoral, and it's not a scam. It's an amazing service for landlords, a much needed service for landlords, where HMO specialists can manage the property and deliver guaranteed rent. For us, it's a 24/7 business. For our landlords, it's passive income. What are your thoughts about rent-to-rent? I hope if you were a skeptic that this video has tried to show you how it can work. So please comment in the comments. Thumbs up if you're, rent-to-rent's providing a much needed service. That can be an amazing deal for HMO landlords. Or thumbs down, no, it's illegal, it's dodgy, it's immoral, it's a scam. Okay, let's have a vote in the comments and see how thinking is changing. Hopefully it is changing. And if you found this useful, please subscribe using the red button below. Give me a big thumbs up underneath the video and share this video with anyone who you think really needs to hear this content. I'll see you next week, guys, for more things HMO. Bye for now.